Hello there, and welcome back to our journey through Stargate Atlantis. You know, it occurred to me that I said I was going to do this, but I never said why. And, well, the simple reason is that I think Stargate Atlantis is the pinnacle of sci-fi entertainment. Every time I watch this, and I watch it about once every year or so, I'm always left in awe of how good it is. And every time I watch this, I drag hubby into this, and he obliges me, and he shares my joy and excitement, but the man's tired. So instead of just telling him, I'm telling all of you good people out there now. So anyway, back to our main feature. And today we take up where we left off last time with Stargate SG-1 Season 7, the double episode or season finale, Lost City Part 2. And we start with a slightly prolonged sequence where Jack finally speaks enough ancient to help Daniel figure out where they have to go once Teal'c returns. Then Jack starts gathering supplies, and Weir mostly looks on. Off-world, Teal'c and Master Braytak secure both a ship and a pilot to help it fly. And then the human contingent of SG-1 leave to join the Jafar. And I left this out earlier, but the real reason they have to go is, or they have to go in this little ship, is they can't dial into the planet where they have to go. Like, it's been the Stargate on that planet's been lost in fire, and they don't want to send the Prometheus because the Prometheus is the last line of defense when Anubis attacks Earth. So they have to go in this little ship that Teal'c and Braytak commandeered. And as they leave, Weir makes a little joke. It's a pretty bad joke, and Jack in fact tells her it's a bad joke, but it's a cute little bit of characterization that continues throughout the season. And you know, actually, when I look at these episodes, I feel like the writers had a very definite idea of who Elizabeth Weir was going to be. A lot of her quirks are established here with Blonde Weir, and obviously I don't know who should take the credit for the strong continuation of the character after the actress change, but it's pretty much on par with Michael Shanks's portrayal of Daniel Jackson in Season 1 of SG-1. I mean, it's the face is slightly a lot different, but there's something in the core of the character that is still recognizable. And in fact, in this shot of Weir looking on, we see this is a shot of Elizabeth looking as the team go through the gate, and we will see variations of this throughout the series. This look of longing on her face, but you can also see she's kind of scared for them. She wonders if she did the right thing, but also knowing she has to stick to her guns, and I think often kind of wishing she went with them. It's a very woeful expression, and we kind of see this often throughout the first 3 seasons of Stargate Atlantis. And the team is off to where they believe the Lost City is, and the president is told that Anubis's force has been spotted in orbit. And after a bit of back and forth, he says they should remain at DEFCON 3, but they should alert the nations of Russia, Great Britain, China, and Canada in that order. And I have to wonder why Canada is like tacked on at the end like that. It's not like it's not being filmed in Canada and everything, you know, and like half the actors are Canadian, more than half. I mean, everyone's Canadian, except for the South Africans. There are so many South Africans there, but that's a conversation for a later time. And I also want to say, when putting it together this time, I've previously missed it, but in the first episode, when Teal'c says he and Master Braytak will be leaving to go look for some ships, we can see that the DEFCON alert behind them is already set at 3. And back to the series, SG-1 arrives on a barren planet where they find an ancient chair, the control chair, and a ZPM. There is also a fancy map of the galaxy, a holographic map of the galaxy, and we are informed that the lost city is in fact Atlantis, and it is located on Earth, in Antarctica. And then you remember that little pilot Teal'c and Bretak picked up? Well, he deals Bretak a mortal wound. He is actually still loyal to Apophis, who is very dead at this point, but he might be loyal to Anubis now. Anyway, he deals Bretak a wound, which should have killed him immediately, but Bretak is on Tritonin, so he no longer carries a symbiote, but it's still a mortal wound. Fortunately, because Jack now has the powers of the ancients, he's able to heal him, and I kind of like it. They didn't put any flashing lights or glowing CGI effects on this. They just left it to the actors to show their amazement and the pain of the healing, and it's a good scene. And mostly I mention it because this will be a canonical ancient power going forward. In the president's office, I would also like to point out that this guy, he's an actual US Air Force general playing himself. And Kinsey leaves for Cheyenne Mountain, where the Stargate is, to flee to the Alpha site, the safe space on another planet where Anubis isn't blowing up the planet underneath the humans. And Hammond is given his new orders. And back at the SGC, time is slightly malleable in this episode. Kinsey really travels fast between Washington and Cheyenne Mountain. Then again, I have to admit, I have no idea where Cheyenne Mountain is. I've watched the series and I've seen Cheyenne Mountain in this, and I can spell it and everything, and I have no idea where it actually is on a map. But anyway, Kinsey travels back and forth between Cheyenne Mountain and the Oval Office quite quickly. Where was I? Anyway, when he's back at Cheyenne Mountain, he overplays his hand, and President Hayes fires him, putting an end to the clown. And in the same scene, Weir then tells the president that she thinks the best thing they can do is to launch the Prometheus to assist SG-1's little ship when it arrives in Antarctica. And then we cut to a scene that logically should have disrupted the climax of the episode, but I know why they left it in. It's very cool, and it's very dramatic, and it does belong there. And, the scene is Hammond is shown to take control of the Prometheus, and I think this is a stroke of writing genius. He wasn't just written out, but we, the audience, are shown that his path took him to an even better place than the command of the SGC. He isn't going away, he's just helping them from another direction. And then the Prometheus launches, and I love how they cut to Walter being there, and he's wearing his little seatbelt. No one else is wearing a seatbelt, but he's just there. He's wearing a seatbelt. He's the sensible one. No one else wears this. He's the only sensible one on Earth. Meanwhile, the little ship with SG-1 on board reached Antarctica, but they're also about to get their rears handed to them by the incoming Anubis armada. But the day is saved by the humans, their repurposed alien tech, and Hammond in the Prometheus, who says they will do everything in their power to protect SG-1's little ship. It's very dramatic. I like it. You like it. Everyone likes it. It's a good scene. It's I think, if I'm correct, after several polls, that it's this scene makes The Lost City, one of the top 5 SG-1 episodes, which are in no particular order. Window of Opportunity, 1969, The Lost City, Hathor, that one's definitely for the boys, and Ergo, which I love. I just didn't realize a lot of other people like Ergo as well. Anyway, while they're being attacked, we also get a lot of information about the Arctic outpost, because this is just an outpost. Sorry, and we these are things that we hear later in the Atlantis pilot, like the outpost is miles under the ice, and the nearest human outpost is McMurdo. And interestingly, McMurdo is an actual place, just like Cheyenne Mountain. And just as NORAD is actually in Cheyenne Mountain, so is McMurdo also really a multi-country military outpost. I guess when Atlantis is shown to have soldiers from different countries, it's because the people at McMurdo figured out, or partially figured out, that Atlantis, or there's an Atlantis base on Antarctica. And this has always been one of the strengths of Stargate. They use real histories, real places, real events, and then just add on the little bit to make it mystically sci-fi. Anyway, SG-1 beams down into the ice, and up above, the humans are taking a beating. Jack powers another drone chair with the ZPM, and there is this little scene that also, again, I only saw now that I was going through the series frame by frame to put this together. After the ZPM is lowered into its slot, like Jack puts it there and it lowers by itself, but then Jack has to lean over and physically push it in. And when Rodney McKay in Atlantis has to insert the ZPMs the first time, he doesn't realize that. There's like this moment where he's kind of freaking out before he realizes the ZPMs have to be actually pushed down. And I like it. There's some really good writing here. I won't say the entirety of the Stargate franchise was as well written, but this is a pretty good episode, and the stuff that are needed. No, let me put it this way. Obviously, whomever wrote Atlantis was very familiar with the SG-1 lore, especially the lore of these 2 episodes, and it's just good. Anyway, meanwhile, Jack powers the chair, and he destroys Anubis' fleet with the ancient drones. And I really like the drones. You don't see it here. You later on see it, but they look like little squids. I also like the scene where it shows how the squiddies split up around the Prometheus to attack the Goa'uld fleet. And it's just an awesome space battle. And then I love that on the planet, we can see how worried Weir is. And then we have this little scene. This is literally all that happens in this scene. You just see the president sitting there, listening, and he's calm, he's almost sad, and he just listens to this radio, triumphantly saying that the day is saved, Anubis' fleet has been destroyed. And through his silence and Weir's worry, combined with the joy, the exaltation of the radio broadcast, you can actually feel the weight of victory. Like, these people knew what the risks were, and you can see how devastated they also are, because even though they won, they know a lot of other people had to die, even if they were Jafar and Goa'uld, because by this time everyone knows it's mostly the Jafar who suffers. And and then back in Antarctica, Jack is put into cryosleep. Sam is she's pretty worried about Jack. In fact, it's always shown that she very much always calls him by his rank, but here she just calls him Jack, because this is the ultimate will they, won't they, which canonically is actually they did get together, but anyway, in this episode, she's very worried. But Jack is put into cryosleep, and we exit as Daniel deducts that this isn't Atlantis, this is just an outpost. And that's it. That's it for the season finale. So let's talk about Dr. Elizabeth Weir, number 1. Now, I've read up some as to why Jessica Steen was replaced by Tori Higginson for the spin-off, and it goes a little like this. Like, apparently everyone was really hopeful that the spin-off was going to happen, but it wasn't 100% sure yet. And so they got Jessica Steen to play Dr. Weir with the tentative promise that she would be cast in the spin-off. And apparently they wanted to cast her in the spin-off, but stuff happened. And so she had to be replaced. And that's why she didn't end up being permanently cast. As to why they went from a blonde to a brunette, I don't know. Jessica Steen is very much a blonde, while Tori Higginson is very much not. Although this is the first time, literally, I've seen the two women next to one another on the same screen. And there is some resemblance, I suppose. They have the same strong features and light eyes. They both have a similar hairstyle. I just maybe would have given some thought to the fact that they went from blonde to brunette. But anyway, overall, I think these are 2 decent episodes. The first one was more atmospheric and at times dragged a bit, but it also worked hard to show the casual intimacy between the members of SG-1, as well as SG-1 and Hammond, as well as a familiarness with their world. Upsetting this world would be a crime, except that Donis Davis, now deceased, had decided to retire at the end of season 7. And if I remember correctly, Richard Dean Anderson also wanted to step back a bit and spend more time with his family. He wanted to direct more and act less. And so Hammond had to be replaced. But replacing a fan favorite is a tricky business. Ironically, fans would have taken this better if Donis Davis had passed away between the 2 episodes. Fans like it when there is a heartfelt goodbye, and they don't feel betrayed by the writers. Like, you can't really argue with a dead actor. But in this instance, Donis Davis merely wanted to retire, and so Hammond had to retire with him, and the writers had to find a way to replace him without upsetting the series. So, yeah, replacing him was a tough task. And no matter what the writers did or how great the replacement was, people were going to start out wanting to hate the replacement of a favorite character. And it is into this hole that the character of Dr. Elizabeth Weir is thrown. And I think they did a fabulous job with their transition. For a start, they didn't ask the audience to like her in the first episode. In fact, when we first see her, she's kind of cold. And literally the first words we hear her speak are negative. And the episode does go out of its way to show us how competent she is on paper. Even Daniel used her work for the SGC, but we aren't given anything about her to like. In fact, when she meets Kinsey, she's predictable enough that Kinsey and Hayes were able to put up this joke with her. I mean, it makes for a very good joke, but a predictable character doesn't make for a good story. Then she is morally outraged at the idea of the Stargate having been kept a secret, but it comes over as pretty obnoxious. And if I hadn't known she would become a main character in the spin-off later, I would have rooted for her to be blown up by Anubis at this point. In fact, as mentioned in the previous video, her meeting with Daniel is even worse than we had just seen. Like, Daniel finds her down in the control room looking at the gate and asks her, pretty impressive, isn't it? And the response is, I don't care. And Now, we know the response is quickly amended by her showing she's talking on one of those little earpieces, not to Daniel, but the writers made this choice. I think they wanted her to portray her as, if maybe not an enemy, then at least an antagonist to SG-1. And this is, of course, made worse by the fact that she seems to be under the control of Kinsey. Kinsey has been proven to be a major antagonist to the SGC and SG-1 in particular. And now he seems to be the one pulling Weir's strings. She also seems weak and unwilling to take a stand, even though she is said to have brokered some of the best international treaties on Earth. So there's a bit of a disconnect between what we are told and what we are shown, and I feel this was on purpose. I think the writers knew that nobody was going to be willing to give her a chance if she was portrayed as capable, never mind likable, right from the start. They purposely put her in the unwitting position in opposition to the best interests of SG-1. But in The Lost City Part 2, in her first interaction with SG-1, she shows interest in their mission and she's amenable to what they are doing. I think the fact that she is wearing a white shirt, in stark opposition to the severe black suit of the previous episode, might also have been a choice by the wardrobe department. She is more casual, less reserved, more open. And she isn't shoved down our throats. She is allowed to gradually grow with our acceptance of the change. In fact, throughout the episode, she is shown to stand up for herself, unprompted. She greenlights SG-1's mission. She is shown to have a bit of a sense of humor, and then finally she gets Kinsey fired, even if that was slightly unintended. She is also shown to be concerned about the fate of SG-1, and when Kinsey tries to flee, she calls him a coward. Actually, as far as turning our opinion of her, this is a very good scene. First, she calls Kinsey a coward, letting us know that not only had she lost respect for him, but she is not his puppet. This also lets us know that she never considered fleeing. She is determined to stay at her post, to go down with the ship, so to speak. And when the power goes out, she immediately tells the control room to put up the shield manually, letting us know that she has not only read the reports on the Stargate program, but understood the threat and the countermeasures that can be taken, and she can think under pressure. She can act accordingly, decisively and quickly, even when someone who is her superior is trying to countermand her. And she sticks to her decision, and she is then proven correct by the narrative, which is how stories work. Now, the first times I watched these episodes, I wondered what the writers were thinking. They made Weir so very unlikable in the first episode. But they knew what they were about. They told us she is capable, but didn't ask us to like her. In fact, they showed us how much we were allowed to dislike her. And then she's put under pressure to prove both to SG-1 and to us that she is, if perhaps not the best choice, at least a good choice of replacement for Hammond. And she also puts herself organically opposite Kinsley, and in fact puts herself between him and SG-1. And that is the final turning point for us, the viewers, to make this step of liking her with SG-1. And she's never presented as a Mary Sue, which I think is important. She had to earn her keep, and in fact throughout the series she is often wrong. But she keeps on trying and proving her worth both to us and to the characters. Now, obviously, I don't know how much of this was conscious choice by the writers, the actors, the directors, but conscious or not, I think everything was very effective. It's also something I think they forgot later on when introducing Sam to Atlantis in season 4. I think they were counting on the fact that the viewers would automatically side and like Sam as the new leader of Atlantis. But Sam is never forced to show she is worthy of the role, and at least as far as I'm concerned, Sam never felt like a part of the Atlantis team. She's SG-1 Sam. She's not Atlantis person. In fact, so much so, and I'll probably maybe not get back to this later, but I resented everything about her tenure as leader of Atlantis. Weirdly enough, the writers did get their collective heads out of their rears, and they put Woolsey through as much of a ringer as they did Weir, and he was actually a likable leader of Atlantis. So, yeah, I would have been perfectly okay with Jessica Steen continuing as Dr. Elizabeth Weir, but she didn't, and I at least think that she was great at giving the character her initial life. And as I said, I think the writers were quietly brilliant. They eased a transition that could have meant the end of the show, and instead gave us a wonderful character to take with us on the new adventure in the spin-off of Atlantis. And that's it for today. To be honest, when I set out to write this, I kind of thought I would be throwing Blonde Weir and the writers to the wolves. But I actually like this episode. I liked it more now than when I started out. And I like Blonde Weir better now than when I first started out, which, I mean, that's what this is all about. So, anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and see you next time.